Morning, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Collins Mdenda, class lecturer, GBS 550, Management Theory and Practice, MBA Stage 1, MBA Finance, and MBA General of the Copperbelt University Lusaka campus. I want to welcome you to today's session, which is 25th of April 2020, Saturday. Wonderful, peaceful Saturday morning. And I want to just do the second video in the series for videos on leadership. And today I'm going to do the second part of understanding who a leader is after having defined leadership and having looked at a number of characteristics that are associated with good leaders as done by Peter Drucker, a research done across Europe and US involving 800 CEOs, and a number of things came out. Today I want now to go global, increase the maybe the continents and see what has been accepted or what is anticipated to be good leadership style among leaders. And so I'm going to use the global leadership matrix. This was done in 2004 by Peter Duffman, Paul Hunges, and Felix Brodbeck. They looked at leadership and cultural variation across a number of continents or regions or blocks of the world, just to see what's expected or accepted in these various locations. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you have not come across this theory or this research, but it's actually existing, it's there, and maybe some of the things that will come out, you will be able to agree with them. So we start. These three researchers identified about 5 leadership styles that are common with leaders out there. One, the charismatic leader. Right? The charismatic leader is a person that is good at talking, can convince you to buy a lawnmower even if you stay at the highest peak of the flats. Right? You could be at floor number 20, but this person is going to convince you to buy a lawnmower. That's a charismatic kind of leader. People that are very talkative, people that they may not know what they're talking about, but they are very good at talking. This is a charismatic leader. Then there's also team-oriented. Yesterday we did mention that a number of companies deal with teams nowadays, or deal in teams, or they do work in teams nowadays, and that is why the research from the CEOs show, one thing we saw was that it was more on we, meaning that we must be a team. So team leadership is another style. Then there's participative. Now, in terms of defining management, we did mention that manager is a person who does things through and with others. So you must be participating. So that's the other leadership style, participative. There's also human-oriented. Now, this we shall see as we talk about Blake and Morton Majority Grid, in which it was suggested that there are two main extremes. That is the production-oriented and the people-oriented, the kind of leadership styles. Now, for these researchers, they looked at only the human-oriented, so they are quite consistent with the managerial grid by Blake and Morton and Blake and McKenzie. And the last one, they called it self-protective leadership. Now, self-protective leadership is a person that is mostly on the I side. So as a manager, this is one who's on the I side, me, Yeah, so these are the 5 leadership styles that they looked at across a number of blocks. Let's look at the blocks. One, they looked at the Anglo block. This Anglo block as Canada, England, and the US of A. Now, in this block, what was seen to be the most acceptable leadership style from these 5 were 3. Were 3. One, charismatic leader. So in the US, they accept more of a charismatic leader than none. Maybe it explains why Donald Trump is such the president today, because he's more on the charismatic side. Even Barack Obama was a charismatic kind of a leader. Then there's the team-oriented. So they want somebody that is going to be very, very participative in what they're doing. He must be, or she must be, a team player. And then the third one is participative leadership style. And so these are the 3 that are prominent in these regions. And so if you look at the presidents these countries have been having, maybe that can be very consistent. Then they don't like They don't like someone who is human oriented. Maybe this explains, for example, why the US system is more on the individualistic system, meaning that people live by themselves, they live alone. And so this is a system where a parent can lend money to a child and the child must pay back. This is the kind of system. So they don't like human oriented because you feel sorry, you feel pity, you lead based on emotions, and that is not with them. And the last one is self-protective. They don't like such a leader, someone who is mostly on the iPad. They don't like a leader like this. That is that block. Then we have the Confucian Asia. This is China, Japan, and South Korea. Here they like a leader who is charismatic and team-oriented. Just these two styles they accept. They don't like participative, they don't like human-oriented, and they don't like self-protective. They don't. Then there's the Eastern Europe. This is Hungary, Poland, and Russia. Again, this block only looks at charismatic and team-oriented. They list, or they are a little bit inclined to perspective and the human, but for self-protective, they absolutely don't like such a leader. Then we have the Germanic Europe. This is Austria, German, and Netherlands. This bloc also considers charismatic leader, team-oriented, and participative, right? Then we have got the Latin America, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico. Again, these countries go with charismatic, team-oriented, participative. We have Latin Europe, France, Italy, and Spain. These they go with charismatic, team-oriented, and participative. And we have Middle East, which is Egypt, Morocco, and Turkey. And these go with only charismatic and team-oriented. Wow, this research, well, is very interesting because if you look at the current president of Turkey, he may not be more of a charismatic person. Well, a little bit charismatic maybe, but in terms of team playing, you will want to doubt that. Then we have the Nordic Europe. Nordic Europe, the Scandinavian countries, there's Denmark, there's Finland, and Sweden. These, they like a charismatic leader, a team-oriented leader, and a participative leader. And then we have Southern Asia, India, Indonesia, and Iran. So here they like charismatic, team-oriented, and human-oriented. This is very interesting. Human-oriented. You can imagine Iran having wanting to have a leader who is human-oriented. Probably if you look at the leaders that Iran has had, they are more on the human side, protecting themselves, and Iran has done well. They've even launched, last week they launched a military satellite. Well, maybe that could be true. Now if you look at Modi for India now, he's more of a charismatic, so maybe this is consistent. Now let's look at where we are. Sub-Saharan Africa, a few countries, Nigeria, South Africa, and Zambia. This is interesting. I know you may not have known that Zambia was part of this research. Now, these researchers found that in these countries, they prefer a leader who is charismatic. Maybe it explains why Michael Sata was once president, because that's one example we have for a leader that is very charismatic. They also like someone that is team-oriented. Team-oriented. Now, if you look at, for example, politically, the presidents we have had, team orientation, I wonder. And then there's participative. Well, interesting. So Zambians said they like a participative leader, but they are least oriented to a human-oriented leader, and they don't like a self-protective leader. So this research is very interesting and gives a number of insights. So some of you are managers, you should know that your workers like you to be charismatic, team oriented, and participative. Your people like you to be a participative leader. So this research is critical in terms of leadership styles, and in the another video I'm going to reveal to you what I found also when I did the research in Zambia on leadership styles, although I concentrated on the project managers to see what they went with in Zambia. But you see, what I'll review could be consistent with some of the findings in this study. So charismatic leader, we have an example here. Nelson Mandela was one charismatic leader. Michael Sata was one charismatic leader. Team orientation, well, this is one that participates in what you're doing. Michael Sata was kind of this. What about Honorable Kaunda? His Excellency Kaunda was also on the charismatic side. He was very vocal, and he really cared for the nation at the time. He was indeed a team player, and he was very participative. So I think this could be true from this research. However, we still need to test it further by increasing probably the sample size, and also looking at the people that we have had in political leadership, in leadership in various organizations, both private sector as well as the quasi-government and public sector. We need to be able to test these things to see whether this research is consistent and indeed very true. But these are the leadership styles that you are going to find out there that people want you to be. Now, there is always a problem with charismatic leadership. Now, you must discuss. Look at a president that was very charismatic. For example, Michael Sata. Look at what he achieved economically. Do you see any correlation between his charismatic style of leadership as well as the economic performance? Do you see any correlation there? Do you see a correlation between Kaunda's charismatic leadership style with the economic performance? Do you see any correlation between team orientation of the presidents that we have had versus the economy of the country? Have you seen any orientation between the participative team orientation and charismatic leadership style of our CEOs and the performance of the organization? Those are questions I want you to answer, because what we saw on the other video, where we found that the CEOs in the US and Europe made a action plan for the organization to grow it, to make it prosperous, and in those countries there are also team orientation, they are charismatic, and they are participative. So we compare with ourselves, because if you look at these developed countries, the CEOs have achieved so much in terms of wealth for the nation as well as wealth for their own employees and businesses. These are people whom today are contributing to the fight against COVID in their countries. They are paying people for being at home. They are still planning to reinvest in their organizations, and companies are still moving, although on lockdown. When you come to Zambia, it's a different story. You have a company like Mopani shutting down in the midst of COVID. We have KCM still on liquidation, still undergoing the liquidation processes. We have maybe only Trade Kings that came out and donated 28 million. We have Zambian Breweries that is just complaining about them not selling to the distributors because the distributors have been ostracized. So for our country, we've not seen radical situations in which companies have shown that indeed they have the muscle, they have the financial muscle, because the leadership style that they have had has also resulted into economic performance of those institutions. Look at the Madison Group not doing so well. Look at a number of insurance companies in our country not doing so well. I wonder if there's any that has come out to donate handsomely even to the fight against COVID. I wonder if there's any that is even, for example, upskilling the workers using its own money, because upskilling workers is one important thing that you must do as a business. So these are issues that we need to check to see whether these leadership styles relate with growth of organizations, with growth of countries, and with prosperity. Because for the Anglo bloc, Canada, US, England, that could be true. For the Confucian Asia, which is China, Japan, South Korea, that could be true, because these styles have resulted into prosperity of the countries. But when you come to Sub-Sahara, these styles have not led to prosperity. The question is why? Where is the problem? Is it the leaders, or is it the people that have been led? Where is the issue? Maybe that is what we need to resolve as we research further on this matter. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me in this presentation. We shall continue in the next phase when we look at the other aspects that will build up from this perspective. You have a good day. Thank you.